but he's a very, very ambitious mayor. He's the mayor of Los Angeles. Los Angeles almost have the same size as this whole country. So this is a mayor who has a very big importance and a very, very big strive to do something about the climate. And on the following days, he will take over the leadership for C40. So thank you so much for joining us. Please help me giving Mayor Garcetti a warm welcome.
Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I just have to get my iPad to recognize my face real quick. All right. Thank you all so much. And Jesper, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for who you are and what you have done. It is wonderful to be back in this space. I was showing off downstairs. When I was here before, I still have the sticker, so it's been on there for 2 months here at the Danish Architectural Center. But really what a warm reception we had. In August, I brought some California weather. Thank you for bringing authentic Danish weather this morning. It is really wonderful to see. But without your commitment to C40 and of Realdania, we would not be where we are today, and we're so grateful for that. I also want to express my thanks to Jens and to Ida and to the entire association who is here today. Great to be with Bruce Katz, my friend, who we've done many things around American cities and revitalization. And for all of you to take time to be here this morning to hear a little bit about what we are doing for the next week here in Copenhagen. I'm also here with my wife, and we came a couple days early so we can enjoy Copenhagen. And I'm just blown away by the city, by this nation, and by the focus, both from the private and public sectors, to really address the needs of people here, as well as your cooperation and participation in the world community as well. So let me talk to you briefly today about two things. One is economic dislocation, which has been wrought by accelerating technological advance in our time. And secondly, ecological devastation that is happening all around the world right now due to a changing climate. And together, these two crises of economic dislocation and ecological devastation have led to the two most profound concerns that people have today in the world. Simply put, if you ask the average global citizen, they will be worried about two things in their lives. First, will the world survive and continue to sustain life as we know it today? And second, if it does survive, is there a place in that future economy for me in it? It's common to hear a lot of times that these things are juxtaposed. They are competitive with each other. They're in conflict. For instance, if we say that there's a factory closing because it's polluting and we have to save the earth, people react saying, well, now there are fewer jobs. On the flip side, if we say we're going to protect jobs, then others are quick to say, well, then the days of the earth are numbered, and clearly we're coming to an end. But in fact, I would offer, and the work that we will be presenting this week, as I take over the chairmanship of this incredible organization, and I agree, I think this is the most important climate change implementation group in the world. Mayors are very busy. We aren't supposed to travel much. We shouldn't get involved in anything besides those sewers and paving the streets, making sure our streets are safe, etc. But this is such a high priority for me because I can't protect my people if I don't protect the globe, if I don't invest in the economy. And I do believe C40 is bringing these two things together. And this week I'll be going in greater detail, but I believe we can't address the anxiety about economic dislocation without simultaneously addressing the anxiety about our ecological devastation as well. In many ways, we are living at this incredible moment in human history, a time which has produced unimaginable breakthroughs, from walking on the moon to the fact that I could tuck my daughter in bed last night seeing her face with this machine, something that even a decade ago would have seemed unimaginable. But it's also a time in which the advances are come so quickly that we sometimes don't even have time as human beings to adapt to them. The impacts of automation, artificial intelligence, we just learn what they are when they change yet again. The pages are turning more quickly than we can read them. And there's an excitement that comes with this innovation, no doubt. Stunning breakthroughs in technology, remarkable leaps forward in our abilities to communicate, to travel, to build. But there's also an anxiety that comes with this, these economic shifts. And it leads us to question whether our jobs, our homes, our communities will be as we have known them, and certainly as our parents and our parents' parents have known them. So I call this mix of anxiety and excitement, anxitement. It's a new English word for you. It's kind of the age of anxitement. You know that feeling when you come up and give a speech. You're excited, but you're nervous. Or, you know, there's breakthroughs and cures for diseases, but If you have one medical emergency, you suddenly could be economically in a difficult situation. And where equitable capitalism could begin to address these anxieties, far too often we see just profits ahead of all else instead of people, or pollution before purity. But here in Denmark, you've clearly shown a different way. You've been progressive in thinking about an economic safety net while still meeting the needs of businesses through flexicurity. You have a protected labor market, but you are financially empowered. And as mayor, I've drawn inspiration from studying the Danish model. As mayor, I see this excitement that human beings have every single day. There's hardly a day that goes by that there isn't a ton of excitement as a mayor and a ton of anxiety as mayor. And I see this in one example. The Port of Los Angeles, together with its twin port of Long Beach, it's essentially one port complex, is the busiest container port terminal in the Western Hemisphere. In 2018, we moved 9.5 million 20-foot equivalent units, the containers, a new record. And it's also, though, unfortunately, a major source of emissions. We know each one of these ships can be as much as 1 million cars in emissions. So in 2017, I committed to make Los Angeles the first emissions-free port in history. Although I have to correct myself, probably not in history, modern history, because I'm sure the Phoenicians had 0 emissions in their port. But we said before the equipment even exists on the marketplace that we would have 100% zero-emission cargo handling equipment by 2030, which is, you know, in business terms, because I'm a CEO as well, like many of you. I run a $10 billion enterprise with about 60,000 employees. We have to make our port and our airport, our electricity company, which is owned by the city, our water, our police department, our fire department work. We made that commitment in a very short period of time. And we also said that by 2035, 100% of the vehicles, the heavy-duty trucks that would come in, would be zero emissions as well. So not just in the port complex, but leaving. And APM Terminals, whose parent company is Maersk here, operates the largest facility in the port, the largest cargo facility in the Americas, and recently announced a plan to partially automate operations with zero emissions vehicles that could lift up those containers. It's a very hard needle to thread, right? On one hand, ensure that there's good middle-class jobs for the workers that are the bedrock of our economy, but at the same time, making sure that our port remains competitive while doing something for the earth. So I brought everybody together, business, labor, port administrators, for a discussion on the future of work. And we agreed recently to a landmark workforce training program at the port that will ensure that today's waterfront workers are equipped for tomorrow's jobs. Even as some divisions go away because of automation, new ones, if we continue to grow, can ensure that there are at least net as many jobs tomorrow as there are today. A program that will provide maintenance, repair, upskill, and reskill training for up to almost 1,000 longshore dock workers in Los Angeles. Now, I'm not saying we've solved the issue of automation at our ports for those workers. That will be an ongoing discussion for years to come. But we've established a framework for how we can begin to address cleaning up our air, protecting jobs, and keeping business going. So to return to the two concerns of economic dislocation and ecological devastation, we see that far from being distinct, these two are inextricably linked. And my advice to a community of businessmen and women today is to make sure that your business enterprise links those two together. We've proven in Los Angeles that not only can you protect your economy and protect the environment, one doesn't have to come at the cost of the other. In 2017, I believe, or 2016, excuse me, we reduced our emissions as a city by 11% in a single year. It may be the biggest reduction of any city globally of that size in a single year. But we cut our unemployment by 14% the same year. In other words, jobs grew as our environment became protected. And since I've been mayor for 6 years, we've added 35,000 jobs in the green sector. Now, we're just 1% of the population of the United States of America. 35,000 green jobs is the equivalent of 60% of the remaining coal jobs in the entire country of America. So if we could do that in a city of just 1%, there's obviously a lot of economic upshot in these investments and transformations. Which brings me to my second point, the anxiety that we feel, and how we can sustain life on Earth as we know it. You know, I'll be speaking later in the week as I accept the chairmanship of C40, and one of the statistics I calculated was in my own lifetime, I'm 48 years old, in my lifetime, over 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions brought on by human beings has been released in my lifetime, in the history of humanity. That's in one, not even lifetime, hopefully half a lifetime or something like that. In our quest to conquer new technologies, to bring about a space age and a middle class, we thought of ourselves and our accomplishments before the health of the Earth. And that's why I'm here, to join with my fellow brother and sister mayors from around the world, 94 megacities that comprise 25% of the world's GDP, business leaders, labor leaders, youth leaders, and so many others, to say that this climate emergency must be met by a decade of action. The 2020s will make or break human civilization as we know it. I don't overstate that because I'm taking over this organization. I truly believe the science is clear. We either implement in the 2020s or begin to see things like 1 billion climate refugees around the world. The discussions we have in the United States around immigration, much of them are actually brought on not by politics, but by the climate. For instance, Central American farmers who can no longer make the coffee that they once did because of climate change where they live in Central America are now picking up and coming north to our border. No matter what you think about immigration, this is just the beginning of it. It's been drawn from the climate change that we have. And as CEO of my city, I've learned that no matter what we do, no matter what we seek to achieve, we can't do it in a vacuum. We cannot go alone. None of us can. We know the power of partnerships with C40. We know Los Angeles has become one of the most economically vibrant cities in the world. The Schroders Index, the prestigious Schroders Index, recently rated us #1 of all the cities of the world, 2 years running, as the best place for investment. It's our metropolitan economy. I am in charge of the 4 million people that are in the core of Los Angeles. But if you go to Los Angeles, it's really one city of about 18 to 19 million people now, the third largest economy in the world of any city after Tokyo and New York, nearly $1.1 trillion. And this momentum you can see and feel in Los Angeles. It's exciting. There's workplaces and offices and factory floors in our legacy industries from aerospace to entertainment, manufacturing, giving rise to new things like esports and digital media, advanced mobility, clean tech, and biosciences. And it's precisely because we are engaged with the world, that we are a borderless city in many ways. We claim to be the western capital of the United States, the northern capital of Latin America, and the eastern capital of the Pacific Rim. I often say we'd have to build a Los Angeles if it didn't exist, because it really is at the crossroads of so much dynamism in the world economy. But we have always been a place that is not about walls, but a place of belonging. You can be Danish and you'll find Danish food, people, culture, language in our city. Or you can be a fourth generation native of the city like myself and see some new collision of cultures that's never happened before, like the Korean short rib taco, which brings Korean short ribs and tacos together, sticks them in a truck, puts them on Twitter, and started the food truck craze globally. I believe that C40 is the same intersection, and as I mentioned, the most important agent of implementing change, not just talking about it. This is a network of mayors founded by mayors, for mayors, linking our Earth across borders. And where others are political and make promises, we are practical, and we have to be programmatic. So where other people are aspirational, we have to be actual. We have now more than 100 cities that have committed through C40 to our deadline 2020. Before the Paris Climate Accords, we accepted the science and committed to the 1.5 degree threshold standard. And that work can't happen soon enough. Our cities now consume 2/3 of the world's energy and account for 70% of our CO2 emissions. From Seattle to Seoul, cities are imagining the economic and ecological marriage that I'm talking about at a very practical level. It goes by many names around the world. In Africa, they call it the green economy. In China, ecological civilization. In the United States, we've been calling it a Green New Deal. And the United Nations, as we see, it's the Sustainable Development Goals. Los Angeles is the first city in the world to host a local data reporting platform on the SDGs. We're just a city, but we've implemented and accepted the SDGs to manage our operations. So what you'll be talking about today is, in practice, something very useful for us. We now, though, I believe, must come together, no matter how we describe this, and enact what I'll call a global Green New Deal. I don't have to tell you what's at stake. We care most about our families, our communities, even before our enterprises. And for those of you who are my age, when I said that 71% of our fossil fuel emissions have been released during our lifetime, that's over 1 trillion tons of CO2. Or as I'll say later, because how do you wrap your head around that? That's more than all the fish in the sea and a couple Mount Everests worth of CO2. And it's not an overstatement to say that we will be the last generation to either confront and reverse this crisis or not. And this will require such deep engagement from business leaders. So I'm so excited you are here, and so excited that Denmark is hosting us here. You need to be the technological innovators that bring us advances that will secure our future, to unlock creative capital models to help cities accelerate this work and businesses as well. And we have to resist the ideological extremism that leads some to label climate actions as pro or anti-business, whether it's advances in the fuel that we put in our cars or the way that we warm and cool our buildings. We urgently require business support to be able to make this a decade of climate action. There's no greater shock to our economy, no greater threat to your bottom line than extreme weather and the destruction of civilization. In our country, I met with the head of our emergency management department. In the last 2 years in America, we've spent as much as the previous 27 to deal with extreme weather events. Let that set in for a second. These past 2 years are as great as the previous 27 years in terms of just the cost to our bottom line because of extreme weather. But I think it's impossible in this room not to be hopeful with all of you. Truly and deeply, I feel that. Denmark is a sustainability leader. Copenhagen's goal to become the first carbon neutral city by 2025 does show us that maybe there isn't such a gap between the protesters in the street and the policymakers and business leaders in the boardrooms. You see, a shift towards sustainability isn't just about our physical survival, it's about our economic survival as well. And this crisis has never been more intense, the prognosis more dire, but the solutions have never been easier and cheaper. Think about that. Most crises become more expensive and more difficult the longer they go. This one becomes cheaper and quicker. We just recently had the cheapest solar production and storage deal in US history in my city. 2 weeks ago we passed it. It was half the price of natural gas. Half the price. Something unthinkable 2 years ago, let alone 10 or 20 years ago. So this battle against climate change is our moral imperative, it's our environmental emergency, and it's a massive economic opportunity. And together we have the opportunity to ensure our survival. Isn't that an amazing opportunity? Think about it that way. If too many of us wait for others to lead, it may be too late. But just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that we won't. For the first time in history, we have the ability to save our planet. At the end of our days, I think we're left with two things. Whom did we know, and what did we do? I'm so glad to have known you and to have spent time here with you today and to work with committed human beings who want to protect one another in this earth. And what we did, I hope we can look back as we retire with our children and our grandchildren and say that, Grandma, Grandpa, we helped save with you this planet to preserve life, to preserve economy, to preserve that quality of what life is all about together. I think that's something worth living for. Thank you so much.